Good day and welcome to you all. My name is William Utech. I am the mission executive for our Minnesota South District, and I'm here today with one of our friends and ministry partners, Dr. Samuel Deressa, who is teaching on the theology department at Concordia University in St. Paul and also serves our district by being a member of our missions committee. Welcome, Dr. Deressa.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so good to have you here today. It's so good to be partnering in ministry with you. And I guess we should begin today by asking you something of your history, how it is that you came to be here among us, and how you came to be involved in the ministry that you're currently involved in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And well, I came to the United States about 10 years ago from Ethiopia. So I'm originally from Ethiopia, from the Lutheran Church in Ethiopia, which is the largest Lutheran church in the world, which is also the fastest growing Lutheran church in the world. And that is where I served as a professor of theology for some years. And after that, I also served as the president for one of the graduate schools for a couple of years. And then I applied to different schools and universities here for my graduate studies. And I was admitted to Luther Seminary, and that's what brought me to Minnesota. And when I came over here, I knew no one from friends that I have right now here in our districts. Mm-hmm. I was not aware of the the Lutheran Church over here in Minnesota, but I was quite familiar with the Lutheran Church and its history, to some extent, even while being in Ethiopia. So that is what brought me over here. And in 2016 is when I also started to teach at Concordia St. Paul as adjunct professor while being a student. Mm-hmm. And in 2018, I was enrolled, or I joined them as a full-time faculty. And since then, I'm teaching as a professor there and also serving as the coordinator for the pre-seminary program.
Very good, very good. What would you say makes your ministry at this time so important and so unique?
Well, Concordia St. Paul, where I'm serving right now, is quite a diverse community. And when I walk from my office to the classrooms or to the library, I get to speak every day at least about 3 or 4 languages, and that shows you how diverse our community is over there. And we do have students from different cultures and backgrounds from different states, and international students coming from Africa and Asia and Latin America, and Muslim students from the Middle East. Sure. And having them all in your classroom, and what always comes to my mind whenever I go to teach, to the classes, is like the missionaries about 100 years ago or so. They used to cross Atlantics to go to other cultures. Now I have every culture come to my classroom, and that happens every semester. And God continues to surprise me, bringing in lots of people from different corners of the world, and me getting the opportunity to teach the gospel to these students. And that is a very, very exciting ministry that I found myself in, and very, very wonderful and exciting experience that I'm having over there.
Yeah, people who grew up in the Midwest, the upper Midwest, would not typically believe that something that diverse, that awesome is happening right in our own Concordia University in St. Paul. And here you are, you get to share the gospel with people from all over the world, and you don't even have to buy a plane ticket.
That is true. And it's not only in the classrooms. And, America continues to be more diverse every year. And here in the Twin Cities, for example, our neighbors are quite diverse. And whenever you walk around your neighborhood, you get to see people coming from all corners of the world. And I just don't know how that happens. But I see this as a great opportunity for us and, to witness the gospel to all these diverse communities. We've got the whole world in our neighborhood.
Right here.
Right
here
here.
in the Twin Cities. That's
Right.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So you are originally from Ethiopia. You are an immigrant, like so many others in Minnesota. You've been here, like you say, for the past 10 years or so. Reflecting on your experience as someone who's come to this country, I need to ask you, what is it like being a non-Anglo person in a church body that is still predominantly Anglo?
Yes, that's well. Speaking as a leader of the immigrant congregations here in the Twin Cities now, what I mostly get to do is to translate, both cultures, and to make sure that both cultures understand each other, both the Anglo culture and the immigrant cultures. And there are lots of congregations or new members coming in and joining the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and those are of course with lots of questions. And if I can give you one example now, when you look at the Ethiopian congregations that are joining the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, now there are more than 55 Ethiopian congregations that join the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod throughout the states.
Okay.
And about 30 or so Oromo speaking and about 20 or so Amharic speaking. And they came based on what they heard about this church from the leaders, and that includes me. And we get to be the one to translate what it means to be Lutheran in a new context. And we get to be the one to translate what it means to live not only in the United States, but what it means to be a Lutheran and also what it means to be a member of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And that requires us to translate this cultural element in addition to the theology and the like. And the same goes the other way. And also we get to be the one to translate what it means to bring in other cultures into this church. And that was the reason why we were engaged, and including myself, in lots of different conversations with church bodies at different places with regard to what it means to include other cultures into our congregations, and what does it mean to be multicultural, and what are the things that the congregations should expect to see when they bring in as many cultures as possible. Some are there are lots of congregations that are really trying to move forward in terms of being multicultural and be reflective of their own context, so to say. There is this excitement, but without knowing how.
Sure.
So we get to help them understand other cultures and show them how to move forward.
Why, in your opinion, is it so important for Lutheran congregations, specifically Lutheran Church Missouri Synod congregations, to think about and to becoming and to work towards becoming multi-ethnic congregations?
Well, I would say for two reasons, and one mainly because that is biblical. And when you look at the book of Acts and the church in Antioch and also other churches that were planted by the apostles and the early church Christian communities were so diverse, and that really helped them communicate the gospel to people of different cultures and different people and in our world. And that is how Christianity became a global religion or global faith, so to say.
Because they welcomed everyone in, and everyone was included, and
Right.
everyone needed to hear the gospel, and when they heard it in
their own languages.
Yeah, in
Yes.
their own languages, and,
Right.
and those early congregations or early Christian congregations reflected the multicultural
Right.
context that they were planted in.
Exactly. And that is the kind of culture that we need to adapt as the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod as well, to move towards being multicultural and be reflective of our context as well. Now, the second reason why I would say that the church should think about being multicultural or to move towards that direction is also like when you look at your context. For example, now I worship at the Jehovah Lutheran Church here in St. Paul, and if you look around that area, the neighborhood, it's so diverse. And whereas when you look at the congregation itself, whether there are two congregations that worships over there. One is the Anglo and the other one is the Ethiopian congregation. And these are both monocultural.
Both monocultural.
Both monocultural. Whereas when you look at the neighborhood, it's so diverse. And for us to be able to communicate the gospel to these diverse communities, we need to be reflective of our surrounding. And we need to have people from all these different cultures that can speak those languages and that can communicate so easily the gospel of Christ to these communities in their own languages and in their own culture.
All right. So you have been living in and around the St. Paul area. You go to church in a very diverse area. Your congregation is located in a very diverse area of St. Paul. You made mention of the number of different ethnicities that live there. You've also witnessed firsthand, kind of the friction that we've been seeing between races over the past 5-6 months, right? And so I, as someone who is still rather new to the area, and as someone who sees things differently because you are an immigrant and you haven't grown up here for your entire life. From your experience and in your opinion, what is your perspective on race relations and the frictions that we've seen going on in the Twin Cities area in our state?
Well, the way I see that is, in my experience for the last 10 years, what I came to understand is that there are extremists in different groups. Like, for example, there are extremists among the white community and extremists in the black communities as well, and those do not represent the whole community. That I could observe, and also the statements that are issued by these extremists, kind of provokes the general community, and we get to witness and see some tensions going on because of that. And at the same time, there are some incidents, that happens now and then. And for example, when Fernando Castillo, when he was killed, that happened about 2 miles from where I lived, and I still, drive by the place where he was killed on Larpenteur and Snelling when I went, to drop my children to their school, and whenever I pass by that same street, and I always think about what happened to that person, and I was a student at the graduate school when this happened. And that continues to happen now and then at different places. And there are, of course, tensions that are going on in our communities. And the question is for the church still how to respond to that. And that is something that we need to, focus on and see how we can respond to that at the church.
I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything like that, but as long as we're talking about this, what in your mind would be a good way for the church, for a congregation, a Lutheran congregation, to respond to that friction, that anger, that unrest that we saw?
Well, I can say two things, and both from different directions. And on the one hand, I would say I would like to point out how other churches are doing it wrongly.
Okay.
And that is, for example, what I have come to see for the last 10 years being here in the United States is other Lutheran churches and other denominations, they have, their approach, I would say, is pretty much, it has become very, their focus have become pretty much based on the social aspect of the ministry. So they have followed what I would call the social gospel,
Okay.
which I think is the wrong way to move forward, or the wrong approach to ministry. So when the social ministry becomes the main mission of the church and the main ministry of the church, and the church becomes drifted from the main call, or the main essence from what it means to be a church, which
Sure.
is to proclaim the true gospel of Jesus Christ.
Right.
So the social gospel is what dominates other Lutheran churches and other denominations. And that is why we find them being so much advocate for human rights and this and that. And when it comes to the gospel, the core of what it means to be a church, we don't see them focusing on that. So when I look at our church, the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod, and I think, when I look at the statements, for example, that was put out by the in the late 1990 by the CTCR document on racism, and defining racism and clearly defining racism as sin, and trying to frame or trying to articulate what this problem is based on what we read in our scriptures and the Lutheran confession. And that is, I think, the starting point
Okay.
For the churches to move forward. And here in our district as well, we did have one conversation in August recently on this very issue. And in our conversation, what we tried to do is to frame this main problem based on how we understand the scripture. So the scripture should be the one, or the guiding, scripture should be the one that provides us with the guiding principle in how we can approach this problem, rather than any other theories or any other philosophies or anything that we hear from outside the church. So what can we do as the church to approach this problem? And there is one thing that I suggested during our conversation in August, and I would like to refer back to that. And when I read, for example, when I closely listen to the writers and also the leaders of the African American communities, and that is exactly what I tried to see for the past like 4 or 5 years, and trying to understand what was going on. Now, what I can clearly see there, what they're mentioning, for example, Cornel West in his book entitled Race Matters, and Martin Luther King Jr. in his book, in his early book, one of the first books that he wrote on community and chaos. And what they mention is the hopelessness of, that is displayed or that we find in the African American communities. So I think the church is in a better position to respond to this main problem that they are mentioning in their books.
Okay.
So what is this hopelessness that they're talking about, and how do we respond to that through, how do we communicate to this hopelessness with the gospel of Jesus Christ? And there is no hope that, there is no better hope than the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the church is in a much better position to respond to this call of the hopelessness in these communities through proclaiming the true gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is, I think, the best approach for the church to go forward.
Okay, thank you very, very much. So as you reflect on what's been going on these past few months, and what's still kind of going on in our metropolitan area, Is there something that you think our congregations, the congregations need to better understand or need to do better than what's going on right now in order that they might be positioned to bring hope into some otherwise hopeless situations?
Yeah, I would say listening, adapting the culture of listening to other cultures, I think is the best thing. And I think for our congregations, we are mostly judgmental whenever we see something happening in our communities.
Okay.
And we try to interpret what happens through our own lenses rather than trying to understand, from the perspective of other communities and cultures. So to be able to listen to other cultures and people, and to be there among these communities and listen to their stories and read what they're writing and try to see, what is happening and what's going on from their perspective, rather than interpreting those events from one's own perspective and conclude that this is it and nothing more. And I think that is a very wrong approach to everything, I would say. So listening to other cultures and listening to their voices and responding to those voices and based on our culture and our ministry and our call is I think what our congregations and our leaders need to do.
So perhaps then, if I can paraphrase what it's being willing to put forth the energy and the effort to spend time with people who are different than me,
Right.
and get to know them, and they get to know me, and we build a level of trust, so that when they talk to me about how they're feeling or how they're viewing what's going on, I'm patient enough to listen and to ask follow-up questions, so I really do gain a better understanding of their position.
Right. That is a culture. That is, in other words, that is adapting the culture of deep listening or listening to your community as much as you can.
But we do have to take the initiative
Right.
to do that, to be willing to do that, don't we?
Right.
And if you've not done that before, that can be a scary thing.
That is true.
That is true.
Yes. And also, if you have already concluded about other cultures, if you have your own misperceptions and conclusions, and you don't want to change that perception, and that is also another hindrance to us understanding others. If I, for example, conclude saying, the Anglos are this or that, without, taking much time and in understanding, their perspective, and that by itself would add to my ignorance, and that is mostly what's going on in our communities. We are too much judgmental, and we don't take time to listen to others, but we have a lot to say about others. And that is, when I observe the social medias, that is exactly what I see. Misinterpretations of events and people and cultures without, taking time to listen to listen to others and understanding the whole world or what is going on or these different events from their perspectives as well.
So you and I, we both hope and pray that the restaurants open up again, because sharing a meal is a great way to listen and learn, isn't it?
That is true, especially with people coming from other cultures. Yes.
Yeah, you just get to taste new things and learn new
Right.
things and make new friends.
That
way.
is true.
Over food, it works really, really well, doesn't it?
Yes.
So if you had a magic wand to wave and you could change one thing that has happened or that is happening in our church body, in our district, in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, if you could change one thing today, what would it be?
Interesting question. So I would say, when I look at churches in the Global South. And one of the courses that I just began to teach is Christianity in the Global South at Concordia St. Paul, which is a very exciting course. And
Now, when you say Global South, what do you mean?
Global South means the non-Western world, like
The non-Western
Africa,
world, okay.
the whole non-Western world, like Africa, Asia, and Latin America, the whole non-Western world.
Okay.
So when you look at the churches in the Global South, what you tend to see is that they are growing at a very large pace and things are moving to a different direction. And there are lots of scholars that are talking about the shift of Christianity to the Global South for this main reason. Now, when you look at these churches and try to investigate or try to understand why they're growing at this fast, and whereas why the churches in the northern world or in the Western world are declining, what many scholars mention as one of the main reasons, and what I also agree with, is the role of lay ministers, and also that is reflected in our church here, and the role that the lay ministers play in our churches, and in other churches, for example, in the Global South now. There is a huge role that the lay ministers play in their churches, and they're for the growth of the church. So they get to be part of every ministry of the church,
Okay.
except for the public, what we call the public ministry, which is the role of the pastors, the ordained pastors, and in all other ministries, they get to be engaged on these, and they are the life of the church.
They're the ones carrying the gospel to the villages, the towns, the communities, and they are encouraged to do that.
Yes.
They're
yes.
equipped and encouraged to do that.
Yes. So the role of lay ministers in our church is not that much emphasized. And I don't see that emphasized. And in the past 10 years, and I've been asking this and why that is the case. And I didn't get any satisfactory answer for this.
Okay.
So if there is, as you said, if there is one thing that I would want to see change in our church, that would be to shift the emphasis of ministry, from the clergies to the lay ministers, or to at least equally emphasize both clergy and lay ministry, rather than only emphasizing the ministry of the clergy and kind of forgetting that there is also another ministry that we need to talk about, which is the lay ministry in our churches and congregations.
Okay, thank you. How can the people and the congregations of the Minnesota South District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, how can we corporately and individually best support you in your ministry?
I think the best way to do that is to continue with what we are already doing, which is to have a conversation and to listen to each other, and to have platforms whereby everyone in our tables that we can listen to and have a conversation with regard to what we can do better in serving our communities here in the Twin Cities. And I think our district is doing very well on this, and I think that should be encouraged for the future as well.
Okay.
So inviting in as many voices as possible into these conversations, and listening to all these different leaders from different communities, and see where they're at, and also supporting them whenever there is a need. And I think there are lots of awesome conversations that we had in the past with all these different communities, and that should be encouraged and even for the future, and that is what I would say on this.
Well, that's just wonderful, Dr. Deressa. I can't thank you enough for spending time with us in this way, and we certainly pray for you, for your family, and for the vital ministry that you do at Concordia University God bless you and keep you.
Thank you, William, for this great opportunity as well. And I'm very thankful to be here and to serve with this. I've got a lot of friends in our districts and in our synod, and I'm very excited to be here. Even though this is a new context for me, every day I get to be excited with what I see in our districts and in our synods, and with what God continues to do and surprise us every single day. So thank you.
You're most welcome. God bless us, everyone.
Yes. Yeah.